December 27th, 1941. Dawn. The Norwegian island of Måløy. Private Tommy Henderson crouches in the landing craft, stomach churning as German machine guns rake the water around them. He's 19 years old, first combat mission, about to storm a fortified beach held by battle-hardened Wehrmacht troops. Then he hears it. Over the naval bombardment, over the gunfire, over the screaming engines, bagpipes. Someone is playing Scottish bagpipes in the bow of the lead landing craft. Henderson turns to his sergeant. That's Lieutenant Colonel Churchill, the sergeant says, grinning despite the terror. Mad Jack. He always plays pipes going into battle. He's insane. Probably. But I'd follow that madman into hell. The landing craft hits the beach. The ramp drops. And Jack Churchill steps into the freezing Norwegian surf, bagpipes screaming the march of the Cameron men into the Arctic wind. He's wearing a broadsword at his belt, an actual medieval broadsword. He finishes the tune, sets down his pipes with the calm of a man parking his car, draws a grenade and hurls it at the nearest German bunker. Then he pulls the sword from its sheath, raises it above his head, and charges up the beach screaming at his commandos to follow. Henderson watches this 34-year-old officer running toward German machine guns with a sword like some warrior from 500 years ago, and something shifts in his mind. Fear doesn't disappear. Fear never disappears, but it transforms into something else. If this crazy bastard can charge German positions with bagpipes and a sword, then Henderson can follow with his rifle. The commandos surge forward. The Germans in the coastal battery are too shocked to respond effectively. They've trained to fight modern soldiers with modern weapons. Nobody trained them to fight a screaming Scotsman with a claymore. The battle for Måløy lasts 9 minutes. Churchill is everywhere. Sword flashing, grenades flying, voice roaring commands. By 0900 hours, 4 German coastal guns are destroyed. 15 prisoners captured, the island secured. Henderson survives his first combat. Years later, he'll tell his grandchildren about the day he followed a madman with a sword onto a Norwegian beach. He'll tell them it was the most terrifying and the most inspiring moment of his life. But that story begins earlier. 6 months earlier in France, where Jack Churchill fired the last longbow shot in European warfare and discovered that ancient weapons could still kill modern enemies. May 1940, 6 weeks before Dunkirk. Lieutenant Jack Churchill sits in a British Army mess tent in northern France, carefully waxing the string of his English longbow while his fellow officers play cards and pretend they're not terrified. Captain Robert Morrison walks over, stares at the bow, shakes his head. Churchill, that thing belongs in a museum. So do half the tactics we're using, Churchill replies without looking up. The Germans are using combined arms coordination we can barely comprehend, and we're still fighting like it's 1918. So your solution is to go backwards to 1415. My solution is to use every advantage available. Churchill tests the bowstring tension. This bow is silent. A rifle shot alerts every German within 500 yards. An arrow kills one man and nobody knows where it came from. Morrison sits down heavily. Jack, I've known you since Sandhurst. You're one of the best officers I've served with. But carrying medieval weapons into combat against panzers is psychological warfare. Churchill finally looks up. Morrison, what terrifies you more? A German pointing a rifle at you, which you've trained against your entire career, or a German running at you with a sword screaming like a berserker, which your mind has no framework to process? Morrison considers this. The sword. Exactly. Modern soldiers are trained to fight modern weapons. Their minds freeze when confronted with something that shouldn't exist on a 20th century battlefield. Churchill stands, slinging the bow across his back. Fear is a weapon. I intend to use every weapon I have. You're completely mad, you know that? Churchill grins. Absolutely. But I'm the kind of mad that wins battles. 3 days later, Morrison will watch Churchill put an arrow through a German sergeant's chest at 30 yards. The first longbow kill in European warfare in over 200 years. Morrison will understand then that Churchill isn't just eccentric. He's discovered something the modern military has forgotten. That war is about psychology as much as firepower. about breaking the enemy's will as much as breaking his body. But first, the German sergeant has to walk into Churchill's ambush, and Churchill has to decide if he can actually kill a man with a weapon designed before gunpowder existed. The Germans are advancing. Churchill is waiting. The longbow is drawn. History is about to change. May 27th, 1940, near L'Épinette, France. Churchill watches 5 German soldiers advance through morning mist. His company has been covering the retreat toward Dunkirk for 72 hours. They're exhausted, low on ammunition, down 11 men. Sergeant William Davies whispers beside him, "Sir, we should fall back, we're outnumbered. They haven't seen us yet." Churchill knocks an arrow. "Give me 30 seconds. "You're actually going to—" 30 seconds, Davies, then suppressing fire on my signal. The German patrol is at 30 yards now. The sergeant leading them is good, checking corners, scanning windows, moving tactically. Probably a Poland veteran. He's looking for rifles, for machine guns, for the threats he's trained to recognize. He never looks for a bowman. Churchill draws the string back to his ear. The yew-wood creaks. His fingers find the anchor point, the same position he used competing at the World Archery Championships 11 months earlier. Back then he was shooting at targets. Now he's shooting at a human being with a family, with friends, with a life that's about to end because Churchill did math correctly. His hands are steady. His breathing is calm. This is just another shot at just another target. The arrow flies. The German sergeant drops without a sound, shaft buried in his chest. His squad freezes for 1 critical second, confused, disoriented, trying to understand what just happened. No gunshot, no warning. Their sergeant just fell. "Now," Churchill shouts. Davies and the other British soldiers open fire with rifles. The remaining Germans scatter, return fire, but they're disorganized, panicked. The ambush breaks them. They retreat, dragging their wounded, leaving the sergeant where he fell. Churchill stares at the body 30 yards away. He just killed a man with a weapon from the Middle Ages. The last longbow kill in European warfare. Probably the last longbow kill there will ever be. Davies appears beside him. "Sir, that was—" "Effective," Churchill interrupts. "That's what it was. Effective. I was going to say incredible." Churchill picks up his bow. "Davies, I need you to understand something. I'm not carrying this because I think it's better than a rifle. I'm carrying it because psychological warfare wins battles. Those Germans just watched their sergeant die from a weapon they don't understand. They'll report it to their officers. Word will spread. And the next time German soldiers see a British position, they'll hesitate for just a moment, wondering what impossible thing might kill them. You're using fear as a weapon. Fear is the best weapon. It doesn't run out of ammunition. Morrison was right. Churchill is completely mad. But his madness has a method, and that method is about to transform him from an eccentric officer into a legend. Within weeks, Churchill will volunteer for the most dangerous unit in the British Army, the Commandos, where madness is a qualification, not a disqualification. October 1941, Scotland. Achnacarry Castle, Commando training camp. Churchill stands in freezing Highland rain with 43 other volunteers. They're attempting a forced march carrying full equipment, 30 miles in under 12 hours. Men half Churchill's age are dropping out, vomiting from exhaustion, begging for rest. Churchill, at 34, keeps marching. His bagpipes are strapped to his pack. His sword hangs at his belt. Other soldiers think he's showing off. He doesn't care what they think. A young lieutenant, Thomas Bradford, no relation to the artillery Bradford from our other story, falls in beside Churchill during a brief rest. "Sir, permission to ask a question?" "Granted." "Why the sword? Honestly. I've heard the stories, but I want to hear it from you." Churchill considers the young officer. Bradford has sharp eyes, good instincts, worth an honest answer. "Tell me, Bradford, you're attacking a German position. 2 scenarios. First, you see a British soldier with a rifle taking cover, firing methodically. Second, you see a British soldier charging at you with a sword, screaming like his ancestors are possessing him. Which one makes you hesitate?" "The sword." "Exactly. Modern soldiers are conditioned to respond to modern threats. Their training kicks in automatically. But a sword? A man with a sword triggers something primitive in the brain. Fear that predates civilization. That hesitation, that 1 second where the enemy's mind freezes trying to process what it's seeing, that's when you win. Bradford nods slowly. It's not about the weapon. It's about the psychology. You're smarter than most, Churchill says approvingly. The sword is theatre. The bagpipes are theatre, but theatre works. The Germans will hear stories about the British officer with medieval weapons, and some part of them will believe they're fighting something supernatural. Fear is contagious. Doubt is contagious. I'm weaponizing both. That's brilliant or insane? Probably both. Churchill stands, shouldering his pack. The march continues, Bradford. Keep up. Bradford keeps up. 3 months later, he'll be on the landing craft with Churchill at Måløy, watching his commanding officer walk onto a beach playing bagpipes while German machine guns fire. He'll understand then that Churchill's madness has a purpose. But first, Churchill has to prove his methods work in combat. The raid on Måløy will be that proof. And Private Tommy Henderson, crouching in the landing craft listening to bagpipes, is about to witness the most audacious commando assault of the war. We've already seen how that battle begins. Now we see what happens after the bagpipes stop playing. December 27th, 1941, 09:15 hours. Måløy Island secured. Churchill receives urgent radio message. The main assault on South Vågsøy is stalled. German reinforcements arrived overnight. Street fighting. Heavy casualties. Private Henderson watches Churchill gather the remaining commandos. 43 men, exhausted from the beach assault, low on ammunition. "Gentlemen," Churchill says calmly, "our brothers are dying across the strait. We're going to relieve them." Sergeant Davies speaks up. "Sir, we're spent. Half our ammo's gone. The men need to save their fellow soldiers." Churchill's voice isn't angry, just certain. "Davies, I'm not ordering anyone. I'm asking for volunteers." Every single commando raises his hand. Henderson will remember this moment for the rest of his life. Not the beach assault, not the bagpipes. This moment, when exhausted men volunteered to fight again because they trusted their commander completely. They crossed to South Vågsøy and commandeered landing craft. The town is chaos. Gunfire from every building, smoke obscuring streets, wounded men screaming. Churchill leads his 43 into the fight immediately. Henderson stays close to Churchill, watching him work. The sword isn't theatrical now, it's tactical. Churchill moves through buildings like a force of nature, grenades through windows, sword for close quarters where rifles are too slow. He's not showing off. He's surviving. A German soldier appears in a doorway, rifle raised. Churchill's faster. The sword takes him before he can fire. Another German in a hallway. Churchill throws a knife. Where did that come from? Dropping the enemy before Henderson can react. "Stay close, Henderson," Churchill shouts over gunfire. "Don't bunch up. Use the..." Explosion. A German stick grenade lands near them. Churchill kicks it back through the window it came from. Detonation, screaming from inside. The battle lasts 5 hours. By 1500, South Vågsøy is secured. 17 British commandos are dead. 53 wounded. Churchill has blood on his sword, powder burns on his uniform, not a scratch on him. Henderson approaches him as medics work on the wounded. "Sir, how are you still alive?" Churchill cleans his sword methodically. "Henderson, I learned something fighting in Burma years ago. Fear is useful if you channel it. Let fear make you alert, make you faster, make you decisive. Never let it make you freeze." He sheathes the blade. "Today you did well. You channeled fear into action." "I followed you, sir. That's all. That's enough." Churchill looks at the destroyed town, the casualties, the cost of victory. "Today we proved something important. Small forces with aggressive tactics can overcome fortified positions. The Germans thought this island was secure. We took it in hours. Because you charged a beach with bagpipes and a sword. Because 43 men followed me." Churchill's voice is serious now. "Never forget that, Henderson. Leadership isn't about being fearless. It's about making others believe they can do the impossible." Henderson nods. He's not 19 anymore. He's a commando, and his commanding officer is the maddest, bravest man he'll ever meet. But Churchill's methods have a weakness, and in Italy 18 months from now, that weakness will nearly cost him everything. September 14th, 1943. Italian mountains above Salerno. Churchill crouches in darkness with Corporal James Riley, studying the German observation post 200 yards uphill. "Sir," Riley whispers, "that's at least 40 Germans up there. It's suicide for 2 men." 40 Germans who aren't expecting visitors. Churchill checks his revolver, adjusts his sword. "Riley, the Germans have been trained to fight large forces. They have protocols for that. Call for reinforcements, establish fire zones, coordinate defense. But 2 men? Their training doesn't cover 2 men sneaking into their position at midnight. We're really doing this. We're really doing this." They move through the darkness like ghosts. Churchill leads, using terrain for cover, avoiding German sentries by pure instinct. Riley follows, terrified and exhilarated. They reach the first German position, a mortar crew. Churchill appears out of darkness, sword drawn, voice calm. "Hände hoch!" Hands up. The Germans freeze. They're staring at a British officer with a medieval sword standing in their position like he materialized from another century. One starts to reach for his rifle. Churchill moves the sword slightly. 9. The German stops. They all surrender. Churchill uses his revolver lanyard as rope, binding the first prisoner. "You're coming with me to visit your friends." In flawless German, learned during his years of wandering before the war, Churchill explains that resistance is pointless. Cooperation means survival. They walk to the next position. The pattern repeats. Each time Churchill appears suddenly, sword visible, voice calm, offering the same choice: surrender or die. Each time the Germans choose surrender, not because Churchill is threatening them with violence, but because his complete confidence is more terrifying than any threat. By dawn, Churchill and Riley are marching 42 German prisoners down the mountain path. The wounded are on carts pushed by their comrades. Churchill is at the front, sword sheathed now, looking like he's leading a walking tour rather than a prisoner column. Lieutenant Bradford, the artillery officer who trained with Churchill at Achnacarry, meets them at the British lines. He stares at the 42 prisoners, then at Churchill. "Sir, how the hell—" "Corporal Riley and I asked politely," Churchill says. They agreed. Riley laughs despite exhaustion. "Sir asked with a sword to their throats." "Details," Churchill says. "What matters is 42 Germans who are no longer directing artillery onto our beachhead." Bradford shakes his head in disbelief. "You're going to get yourself killed one of these days." "Perhaps." Churchill looks at his sword. "But not today." Not today. But in Yugoslavia, 8 months from now, a German grenade will prove that even Churchill's luck has limits. And when he wakes up as a prisoner, he'll discover that his reputation precedes him, and not in a good way. May 15th, 1944. Island of Brač, Yugoslavia. Churchill's luck finally runs out. The assault was supposed to be simple. Land at night, advance at dawn, overwhelm the German garrison before they can organize. But the Yugoslav partisans refused to attack in darkness. They waited. Sunrise gave the Germans time to prepare. Now Churchill is on a hillside with his commandos, pinned down by machine gun fire, watching men die around him. Private Henderson, promoted to corporal after Måløy, is beside him, returning fire. "Sir, we need to withdraw," Henderson shouts over the gunfire. "Not without taking that position." Churchill throws a grenade uphill. It falls short. German mortars have their range now. Shells are landing closer with each salvo. A mortar round explodes directly in the group of commandos gathered around Churchill. Henderson is thrown 10 yards by the blast. His ears are ringing. Can't hear. Can't see through the smoke. He crawls forward, searching for Churchill. He finds him sitting on a rock, bagpipes in his hands, playing "Will Ye No Come Back Again." It's a Scottish lament, a farewell song. Churchill is surrounded by dead men, completely alone, playing music while German infantry advance toward him. "Sir!" Henderson can barely hear his own voice. "We have to move." Churchill doesn't stop playing. Henderson realizes his commander knows they're finished. This is Churchill's way of facing death, with music, with defiance, with absolute refusal to show fear. German soldiers appear through the smoke, rifles pointed, shouting. Henderson expects them to shoot. They don't. They're staring at Churchill, at this British officer sitting calmly playing bagpipes while surrounded by bodies. They don't know what to do with this. A German grenade explodes near Churchill. The blast knocks him unconscious. When Henderson regains consciousness, he's a prisoner. Churchill is unconscious, being loaded onto a German truck. Blood on his face, but breathing. The mad British officer with the sword has finally been captured. The Germans are taking him to Berlin for interrogation. They think he's related to Prime Minister Winston Churchill. They think he has strategic value. They're wrong on both counts, but they're right about one thing. This man is dangerous. Even as a prisoner, Jack Churchill is dangerous, because in 4 months he's going to escape from Sachsenhausen concentration camp, and in 8 months he'll be fighting again. The Germans have captured Churchill, but they haven't broken him. Nothing can break him. September 23rd, 1944, Sachsenhausen concentration camp, Germany. Churchill and 4 RAF officers crawl through 110 meters of tunnel toward freedom. Squadron leader Bertram James, survivor of the Great Escape from Stalag Luft 3, whispers ahead. Churchill, if this collapses, we're buried alive. Then don't think about it collapsing, Churchill whispers back. Think about Sweden. Think about freedom. Think about anything except the tons of earth over our heads. They've been digging for 3 months, using spoons, pieces of metal, bare hands, working at night, concealing dirt under garden compost. Churchill had calculated the angle, the distance, the exit point beyond the perimeter fence. Now they're in the tunnel. Darkness absolute. Air thick. Walls pressing in. James is right. One collapse and they die here. Churchill keeps crawling. His shoulders scrape the walls. Dirt falls on his back. Keep moving. Don't think. Just move. They emerge into German countryside at 0200 hours. Free air. Stars. For the first time in 4 months, Churchill is outside the wire. The 5 officers scatter. Churchill pairs with James. Their plan, walk 200 kilometers north to the Baltic Sea, steal a boat, sail to Sweden. For 2 weeks they move through Nazi Germany, stealing vegetables from fields, drinking from streams, hiding in woods during daylight, always moving north. James asks during one rest, Churchill, why are we walking? We should be hiding, waiting for the Allies to advance. Because I'm a soldier, Churchill says. Soldiers don't wait, soldiers fight, and I can't fight from a German prison camp. They make it to within 5 kilometers of the Baltic coast, so close Churchill can smell the sea. Then a German patrol spots them near Rostock. No papers, no identification, 2 ragged men who clearly don't belong. They're arrested, identified, sent back to captivity, this time to a camp deep in Austria, far from any Allied advance. Churchill sits in his new cell, staring at stone walls. He escaped Sachsenhausen, walked 200 kilometers, almost reached the Baltic, almost made it to Sweden. Almost. But almost doesn't win wars. He needs a new plan, because Jack Churchill doesn't quit, ever. Within 6 months, Germany will collapse. Churchill will be liberated, and he'll discover that the war he wanted to fight, the war he needed to fight, is already over. 2 atomic bombs are about to end his war before he can get back to it, and Churchill will be furious. August 16th, 1945. India. Churchill stands at a window staring at nothing, hands clenched, jaw tight. Lieutenant Bradford finds him there. Sir, you heard the news? Japan surrendered. Churchill's voice is flat. The war is over. That's good news, sir. We won. I didn't win. Churchill turns. His eyes are dark. I spent 4 months in a concentration camp. 4 more months getting back to Allied lines. I volunteered for the Pacific. I studied Japanese tactics. I learned Japanese phrases. I was ready to lead commandos onto Japanese beaches with my sword and my pipes and prove one more time that the old ways still work. Sir, and then America drops 2 bombs and ends everything. Churchill's anger is cold. Do you understand, Bradford? I never got my final battle. I trained for it. I prepared for it. I needed it. Bradford chooses his words carefully. With respect, sir, thousands of Allied soldiers are alive today because Japan surrendered. Millions of Japanese civilians avoided invasion. The bombs saved lives. I know that. Churchill sits heavily. Intellectually, I know that. But Bradford, I'm a warrior. War is what I do. It's what I'm good at. And now suddenly there's no more war. No more enemies to fight. No more beaches to storm with bagpipes playing. He looks at his hands. What does a warrior do when there are no more wars? Bradford sits beside his commanding officer. They sit in silence. Finally, Bradford speaks. Sir, you taught me something at Aknakari 3 years ago. You said leadership isn't about being fearless. It's about making others believe they can do the impossible. You made us believe. You made Henderson believe. You made every commando who served with you believe that fear could be channeled into action. So that's your legacy. Not the Germans you killed or the battles you won. The men you inspired. The soldiers who'll tell their children and grandchildren about the day they followed a madman with a sword onto a Norwegian beach. You changed how men think about courage, about fear, about what's possible. Bradford pauses. That matters more than one more battle. Churchill doesn't respond immediately. Then, quietly, perhaps. He'll struggle with peace for years. Will jump from planes in his 40s just to feel alive. Will surf river waves because danger calls to him. Will throw briefcases from moving trains because normalcy suffocates him. But Bradford is right. Churchill's legacy isn't the kills, it's the inspiration, and that inspiration will outlive every soldier who served with him, including Private Tommy Henderson, who went to Måløy as a terrified teenager and came home a commando. Who will tell his grandchildren about bagpipes and swords and a madman who taught him that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's fear weaponized into action. March 8th, 1996. Surrey, England. Jack Churchill dies at 89, surrounded by family, a lifetime away from Norwegian beaches and Italian mountains. The obituary struggles to capture him. How do you summarize a man who killed with longbows and swords in the age of tanks? Who played bagpipes under mortar fire? Who escaped concentration camps and captured 42 prisoners alone? But perhaps the real story isn't in Churchill's kills or escapes or medals. The real story is in what happened after. Private Tommy Henderson returned from the war and became a teacher. For 40 years he taught history to teenagers in Manchester. Every year on the anniversary of Måløy, he'd tell his students about the day he followed a madman onto a Norwegian beach, about bagpipes screaming into German machine guns, about learning that courage isn't fearlessness, it's acting despite fear. Hundreds of students heard that story. Some became soldiers, some became teachers. All of them remembered the lesson, that one person's absolute conviction can inspire others to do impossible things. Lieutenant Bradford stayed in the artillery, retired as a colonel, taught tactics for 20 years. He started every class the same way. War is about psychology as much as firepower. The enemy you terrify is easier to defeat than the enemy you outshoot. Corporal James Riley became a police officer in London. He told colleagues about capturing 42 Germans with a sword. Most thought he was exaggerating. He wasn't. Squadron leader Bertram James wrote a book about escaping Sachsenhausen. Churchill appears in 2 chapters. The man who calculated tunnel angles and kept everyone's spirits up through 3 months of digging. And Jack Churchill, he spent his retirement playing with model boats, piloting steamships, surfing river waves, throwing briefcases from trains, living exactly as he'd fought, with complete disregard for what others thought impossible. He died peacefully. No drama, no bagpipes, just an old warrior finally at rest. But his legacy lives in every Special Forces soldier who learns that psychological warfare wins battles, in every commando who understands that unconventional thinking defeats superior firepower, in every leader who makes their people believe the impossible is achievable. Tommy Henderson was right. It's not about the sword. It never was. It's about the madman who carried it and made everyone around him braver.